And welcome into the Dino Construction Podcast. I'm your host, Justin, and joining me for our first episode and every episode thereafter, we have David and JP. Today, we are excited to bring you a 2 round rookie mock draft as our main segment. But first, we'd like to start by going over our news segment with our lead anchor, JP. Go ahead and take it away.
All right, and with our main story tonight, there's a new Dynasty podcast. That's right, three more white guys who never played football giving advice on fantasy football. Just a little backstory. Us three, we met in the Megalo Bowl from the Fantasy Footballers in 2021. We then started a Dynasty League, which was my first Dynasty, called the Megala Dynasty. And now I'm in 5 Dynasty Leagues. The reason that I want to start this podcast is because I've been a huge fantasy nerd since I was 12. Like in middle school, is like I read articles and always looking for all the fantasy news all the time. And when I started playing Dynasty Fantasy, that passion or borderline obsession with fantasy went to another level.
Mhm.
It's been my most time-consuming hobby over the last few years, really. And I've always created my own rankings, ran my own studies and my own notes. So made sense to shift my time towards creating content to share with others. All you other fantasy football enthusiasts out there.
Yeah, and that league you're talking about, that was also my first Dynasty League, but immediately after hopping into that startup, finishing it up, realizing, oh, shoot, I blew this one in year one. I hopped in 3 more that year and am now at 12. I mean, like what you said, I'm just in Dynasty all the time. I probably message about 15 to 20 people a day on Sleeper, either asking for trade advice, sending trade or probe offers. I need a life, but this probably is the life. Nobody else really wanted to hear about it in my everyday life. So wanted to get together with these guys to actually talk about it, talk through what we're doing. I like to play pretty seriously. I like to make most of my moves. I kind of have like an 80-20 rule that like I kind of have as a loose rule that I like to make 80% of my moves very process oriented, and about 20% of the time I like to try to take some player takes and go after guys who I like. And I'd like to really get that into a more exact science of like why we're doing that and improve my thought process just by talking it out, because I think that's really how we learn in Dynasty is by just like talking out and having to like justify why we're making decisions. I mean, that's just how we learn in life in general. And my biggest reason why is I'm just hoping that David just lets something slip that'll help me get the edge up on him in that Megala Dynasty League where I lost to him in the finals last year. I'm coming for you. Just so
Take him
you know,
down.
I'm coming for you.
Hey man, bring it on. I still got a good team this year there. And oddly enough, I joined this podcast just so that I could also keep my edge on you, Justin. So I grew up in a fantasy household. My dad has a fantasy baseball league that's sold. They were keeping score like from the newspaper. It's a really interesting league, but that's a topic for another time. I really enjoy talking through process. None of my friends or family are dynasty degens like us, so I need an outlet for that. And the podcast kind of provides that. But I'm also looking forward to learning from not only my co-hosts but you guys in the community. I think some of the sharpest players I know would never consider making content. So hopefully we can get you to give some responses here and there that can help us grow as well. I'm generally process driven, but like Justin just said, sometimes I want to have some player takes. I do want to have some fun with it. This is a game, and I try not to forget that. Even though we have money on the line, we like to win money. So that's why I'm mostly process driven. I have a bachelor's in statistics. I don't work in the field, so I'm not the best statistician ever, but that background definitely leads me to lean on the data when I'm forming opinions. But yeah, looking forward to this podcast. We'll be bringing you some long shows like this. We're also going to do some shorter, like single topic shows in the 5 to 20 minute range. So just excited to improve my process with you guys. And I really thank you if you're with us here from the start. That's really awesome. And we really do appreciate it.
Yeah, we are excited to share this ride with all of you, but we are going to go ahead and just hop right into our main segment from there. So we have a standard format here at Dino Construction: 12 teams, Superflex, 1.75 tight end premium, start 11. No additional scoring tweaks. So I'm going to hold the first pick in this rookie mock draft. We're doing a two rounder. I'm going to draft every third pick. JP holds the second. David will hold the third. And again, we're doing those 2 rounds today. We will dive deeper into future rounds in later episodes. So this is obviously after the combine and many pro days at this point. So now we have a lot of information to operate on, but not quite draft capital yet. So with all that being said, at the 101, I'm still taking Marv. I'm going to keep this really brief. The
Ooh.
Keenan Allen trade, the Justin Fields out of there. I mean, it's got me a little bit more trepidatious about this. It's got me leaning towards some worry, but I just think he is going to be incredible. QBs recently, we've seen a lot of QB busts. They usually hold value for the first couple of years, even if they aren't doing great. But I just think long term, this is the asset that I feel the best about on my fantasy team.
Well, yeah, you took one of the best wide receiver prospects we've seen in a while, and here at 102, I plan on taking one of the best quarterback prospects we've seen in Caleb Williams, and that's who I would take at 101 is Caleb Williams. In Superflex, I mean, quarterbacks they're hard to come by. Some teams have 3 quarterbacks, not all do because it's just the way it is. There's not 36 starting quarterbacks. Assuming you're in a 12-person league, you're not all going to have 3 starting quarterbacks. So yeah, just with the scarcity of quarterbacks, the upside of them. I mean, you see the startups, the first 8 picks are going to be quarterback. I'm sure a lot of people probably heard this, but I mean, this is not a normal scenario for a 101 quarterback to walk right into. Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, that is a great wide receiver core to step right into. So I do think that he has a pretty good shot at putting up some great fantasy numbers in his first year, and he has that rushing upside as well. I just really like Caleb Williams as a prospect, and yeah, he's definitely my pick here, and I am quite happy to have him at 102.
I do think they're the first 2 picks is the first decision of the draft. It's which do you prefer? Which do you prefer with your roster construction? But it's going to be those 2 guys. This is the first bigger decision. I think there's only 3 guys here though, so not much bigger of a decision between Neighbors, May, and Daniels for me. I think all of these guys need a lot to go right to hit their ceiling outside of their control, and that's the same for every prospect. Nothing against these guys specifically. I just feel like the receiver has less that needs to go right for them to hit their ceiling. So I love all 3 of these guys. I'm going to take Malik Neighbors. He's wide receiver 1 in most classes. I'm thrilled to get him here.
And I am personally thrilled that you took him there. Not because I think it's a bad pick. I have a league where I'm going to pick him at 103, but because I am just in love with the rushing upside of one Jaden Daniels. So I mean, for me, it just comes down to like every year we hear these quarterbacks who have these rushing tools. Like last year, Will Levis, like might be obviously Anthony Richardson, but Will Levis type of quarterbacks who are a little bit unpolished. Anthony Richardson, that's a little bit unpolished. Before that, we have Malik Willis, and we're always just worried about those guys. But this guy, even though it's really only one big year, he did it, right? Won the Heisman, incredible touchdown to interception ratio. Actually, the last 2 years, even though he didn't have a lot of touchdowns the year before, he also had a great ratio. So he's just a guy that I think he's shown is a competent passer in the SEC. I know that there's some concerns about his frame and the way that he runs and staying healthy long term, but just the upside this guy's got, I got to do it. I am ecstatic to get him at the 104.
Yeah, I can't blame you there. The rushing upside. I mean, typically, if you're one of those high end rushing quarterbacks, you don't even need to be a great NFL quarterback to put up top 10 fantasy numbers. So I can't fault you there. I mean, I am a little bit worried about how it took him 5 seasons to put up big numbers in college, and he has 2 first round wide receivers. But with that being said, I cannot fault you. Like I said, the rushing upside is very enticing, and I'm going to go with the other quarterback here at 105 in Drake May. He doesn't have the rushing upside that Jaden Daniels does, but he is also a great rushing quarterback threat as well. It's a pretty underrated part of his game, in my opinion. I'm a pretty big Drake May fan. I think that he has that Josh Allen, Justin Herbert stealing. I mean, at UNC last year, he had nothing to work with. The offensive line, the weapons were like just the whole team around him on offense was not that good. So I'm pretty happy to see, even though he had a down year compared to his 2022 season, it's nice to see that he can step up on a bad team. That's what we like to see. If you're in a bad situation, he could still provide success. And some of the things statistically that I love about him is he is the most big time throws in this class. I think it's the most in the last 2 seasons. His turnover worthy plays were pretty low. May's the only quarterback of the last 2 years to account for over 9,000 total yards of offense. He had the best FBS completion percentage on throws 20 plus yards downfield. I mean, he has a lot of great things going for him. I don't think he's 100% polished as, a 102 kind of quarterback would be. We don't know if he's going to go there yet, but he's 102, 103 in my opinion in the NFL draft. I just think that the upside, all the tools that he has, I think that he is one of the best quarterback prospects we've seen in the last few years.
Yeah, I agree. I think these three picks kind of went. I mean, in some order, that's how you're going to see them go. They went as I expected here. JP, like you touched on with me, he might be a little unpolished, but he's also young. My pick here at 6 is actually really easy for me. I always lean wide receiver when I can. I think Roma Dunze is an excellent wide receiver prospect, maybe the best wide receiver 3 we've had. The very first all green route tree given to a prospect by Matt Harmon over at Reception Perception. Imagine you've heard of him. If you haven't, go check out his work. He is probably the industry standard for wide receiver evaluation. It's just really hard to pass on a prospect like this at the sixth pick in the draft. I don't need to talk much more about him. We all love him. He's most people's sixth overall player, so we'll just leave it there.
Yeah, I wish you would have left me him because now I have to make a decision between two guys I really like. But I am going to go ahead and I will take with the 1.75 tight end premium Brock Bowers, mostly just so I can, have Brock from Pokemon as my team logo, but also because of the fact that, I mean, two-time Mackey Award winner, only one player ever to do that. Yards per route runner, amazing. I mean, this guy is a absolute stud. Obviously, we're always concerned they won't perform year one as a tight end, but we have generational thrown out all throughout this draft, possibly generational. I got to do it.
Yeah, he's one of the best tight end prospects the last 10 years. And what he did as a freshman was just insane in the SEC. So, yeah, I love that pick. He is who I was hoping to take. But I am pretty happy with being at the 108 here, though, because I do think that there is still one more player in this tier, and that is JJ McCarthy. I mean, there have been lots and lots of talk about him really, really flying up people's boards to where maybe he's top three, top four pick. I personally think he's the fourth best quarterback in this class, but he does have a lot of really, really great tools. At third down situations, I love what he did there. He's a sneaky good athlete. He also won a lot of games at Michigan, and Harbaugh, his head coach, talks very, very highly of him. So yeah, if there's going to be a quarterback drafted in the top 5 of the NFL draft, if you're able to get him at the 108, yeah, that is a smash pick.
Yeah, this really is a terrific class, isn't it? I mean, these 8 guys are all potentially elite assets. I think there is probably a consensus here at 9. Most people probably have Brian Thomas in his own tier here. We don't quite put him in this next year with JJ. Me personally, I'm not so sure that he should be in his own tier. Maybe he should be in a tier with a few other people. I do think he probably goes somewhere in the draft that leaves him as the wide receiver 2 on his team with potentially limited options to be wide receiver 1. So I'm going to do a little something different here. I'm going to
Yeah,
take Jonathan Brooks. I do think he ends up RB1 in this class. I think if the Dallas Cowboys were to bring the Texas prospect into Dallas to lead their backfield, this might even become consensus. I will say if it ends up being like Trey Benson or something that goes to Dallas in round 2, he would be here instead of Brooks. I feel like there will be a running back or two that sneak into the back end of this first round, and the Dallas landing spot's the most obvious one, but it doesn't have to be there. But yeah, I think we'll see a running back come up into this area.
Dallas is a gold mine.
Yeah, can't knock you for that. Not the running back I'm hoping for because I don't have any shares yet in any of my any of the leagues that I already have rookies drafted in. but definitely one there's a lot of hype on. I'm stuck here making a decision between Brian Thomas and Xavier Worthy. And without knowing the landing spot, I think I'm actually going to go Xavier Worthy. Just the 3 years of production. They're both just speed freaks. So having more production and more refined route tree, right? Versus Brian Thomas really just ran a few routes at LSU. Doesn't mean he can't, but it's just the choice I've got to make at this point. So I actually have to nudge Xavier one spot up in my personal rankings because I think I have to place him just a little bit ahead of him till we know landing spots.
Yeah, I do think that you could argue that Worthy's going to be in the tier with Brian Thomas. I mean, he produced at an earlier age. We don't know draft capital yet. We assume they're both first rounders, but you've made my decision pretty easy. I mean, geez, JJ McCarthy and Drake May and now Brian Thomas Jr. I'm loving it over here. Not only would I love this in general, but yeah, it's pretty easy. I think Brian Thomas Jr., like David alluded to, is probably in his own tier here. I really like him. I think that he has insanely long arms. If you see him making highlight plays, I mean, he can just go up and get it. One of the best RAS scores we've seen. He's an incredible athlete, and yeah, I really like him here. I don't know what his landing spot is yet, but obviously, but I do think that he's going to be impactful wherever he goes.
Yeah, we just didn't want to make you work too hard, so we let him slip to you, JP.
Easy day in the office.
Yeah, yeah, no joke. I think that's definitely one of the better values we've seen so far in our little mock draft here. But certainly not out of reason. I wouldn't be surprised if this happens in several drafts. I think we keep the receiver run going here. I think there's a chance draft capital dictates we take someone else. But there's several receivers I really like: A.D. Mitchell, Troy Franklin, all worth talking about here. But I do think I'm going to land on my guy Lad McConkey here. I know the counting stats aren't great. His usage maybe wasn't what we wanted at Georgia. There were some injuries involved with that. Don't get me wrong, but the efficiency stats are there. When you see him at the Senior Bowl, he's cooking guys in routes. Like, he can win inside, he can win outside. I've seen comparisons to Antonio Brown, which is kind of silly, but also it's from some people I respect. So like, I'm not going to deny it. He wasn't saying he's going to be as good as an AB, but he moves in ways that AB moves. So yeah, I love the upside of Lad here, and I think as long as he gets the right landing spot, he'll be in the back end of this first.
Yeah, I like that pick there. What I don't like is having to make a decision here at the 201. So I've got three people in mind: Troy Franklin, AD Mitchell. I probably should be considering some QBs here, but I'm also considering Trey Benson as a possibility. I think I'm going to keep the wide receiver run going, and I'm honestly not sure how to resolve this between those two. I looking at my rankings, I do have AD Mitchell one spot higher, but the more I look into his production profile, just how much of his dominator rating came from touchdowns, 1.78 yards per route run being so low, and Troy Franklin having a really great analytical profile. I think I gotta adjust my rankings one more time. That's why I love mock drafting, so that I can make sure I really actually have to make choices now, not when I'm on the clock in a real league. I gotta go with Troy Franklin here.
Can't say I blame you. I think that those are right now where the market is. Those are the two guys that people are deciding between at the the 1-2 turn here. I think it's kind of some people are higher on AD Mitchell, some are lower. He definitely seems to be rising up boards. Oh man, and that leaves me with my decision, of course. And Trey Benson was somebody you mentioned, but I'm deciding between him and AD Mitchell. But man, I think I'm gonna go with AD Mitchell here. I do think that there's a lot of really great flashes from him. I do worry that he gets a little bit lazy with his routes sometimes, but hopefully with some great coaching, some experience, hopefully he gets that out of his game. Reminds me a little bit, honestly, in a lot of ways, of like somebody like George Pickens. We've seen him kind of slack it sometimes, but he's that X wide receiver who can get downfield. He's a speed guy too. Man, I just think that the upside at 202, it's just too enticing for me. And if he goes right where he's projected to go at the end of the first, I think the Bills Chiefs are a feasible landing spot for him, and he could really, really climb up into the back of the first if something like that happens.
Yeah, great combine for AD. I think that's really where he started to fall into this range, and I can't really blame you. I have heard that some people talked about how his lack of effort is almost based in his knowledge of the game, where he knows he's not really in the projection or the progression. Sorry, so he takes the playoff because he doesn't think he needs to be there. NFL teams don't love that, but I mean, if that's true, that's interesting. At least I think. I do love those two receivers. I think this little back end of the first, start of the second run on receivers will happen a lot. I'm going to make a pick that you guys probably could have telegraphed before we started this, because I do it every time here at the top of the second. I'm going to take Bo Nix. I still think he's going in the first round of the draft. We do expect someone to trade up for JJ McCarthy. That means maybe the top four picks are quarterbacks. Then we still have whoever doesn't trade up, which it could be three of the four of New York, Denver, Oakland, Minnesota. Always a possibility of a dark horse team. That's a lot of players that could be left out of the quarterback market if they don't take Bo Nix. So I think he ends up going in the first, and a first round quarterback at 203. I don't really care about his profile, though I do like Nix's profile.
Yeah, I mentioned that I should have been considering QB at the 201. It's a very smart process play. I just feel a little bit safer with the wide receivers there, but I think at the 203, that might be 2 months from now the steal of this draft. The next guy I'm going to take off the board is going to be Trey Benson. Mentioned that I was considering him at the 201. At this point, I have to take him here. So I'm not, none of us here are really film guys right now. We all want to improve that type of aspect of our game over time, but right now we just listen to film guys. And some film guys say he's got questionable vision, other people say they like his vision. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let the NFL tell me what they think about it with their draft capital, but based on everything I'm hearing, seeing, I expect late days 2 or late round 2, sorry, early round 3 type of capital, and if he falls in that range to a landing spot where he's got path to production, I'm all in because he is fast and big enough. So, I am excited to get him here. He currently is my RB1 in the class.
Yeah, I do think that this is a good spot for him. I mean, you're just betting on his size and his speed, which is not a bad bet to do it at running back. I kind of side with those guys that are a little questionable about his vision, but we'll have to see. I mean, he could be a great value. Here at the 205, I'm definitely between a running back and a wide receiver that I really love. But if I'm playing the game a little bit, which maybe me saying that exposes something potentially, I'm going to go with Braylon Allen here. Initially, earlier in the process, I wasn't super high on him. There we go, Justin. Wisconsin Badger. That's right. Yeah, I mean, this guy, he came out of high school really, really young. It's 17 years old, and just carrying the load. I think that there's a lot to be said about when a running back is able to handle volume, that translating from college to the NFL. I really think that because of that, teams are going to trust him more to give him a larger workload. I think that he's going to be somebody that's going to be used in the short yardage red zone situations. So yeah, I think that he could be a really interesting player in the second or third round of the NFL draft.
Yeah, I think he's definitely got the tools if he gets the draft capital there. He's one of those guys that I think has a shot of sneaking into the back of the first. Not high on my list, not an RB3 for me personally. So I will take my RB3 in Jalen Wright. This guy is just electric. He's very fast. He's big. He's a good pass protector. I think it was back to back years with touchdowns of like 75 plus yards or something. So a real home run hitter. Just the skill set NFL teams are looking for and the size they want. So I do think he gets day two draft capital and then wheels up for Jalen Wright there.
And this is a kind of new process for me here with my next pick. Seeing these three running backs going off the board here, they were all ranked before, and now I'm kind of feel like I'm moving into a new tier of players. Although I don't currently have Braylon Allen up there with those guys, I would love to so much. And I'm actually going to take a guy that my process says I shouldn't take because I don't like guys who break out late. I don't like guys who only have 1 year of production.
Sure, I thought I could wait on him.
But I'm gonna go ahead and take who I need to move way up in my rankings. I'm seeing him mocked potentially in the first round of the NFL draft. Xavier Leggette. Hope I'm pronouncing your last name right. David actually shared some information from X earlier today, just kind of chronicling some of his story. There's a lot of extenuating circumstances around his breakout age. So there was a lot of stuff going on with him in his life. Mom and dad died in about a 6 month period. Then there was also when he was in college, the COVID year going on. If David, I'll throw this to you in just a second to talk a little bit more about it. But I just think David is winning me over here, and I want to snipe him because if I can't beat him in our actual leagues, I at least want to beat him in a mock draft.
Yeah, I will say I think I probably would take Leggett over Wright. I was just trying to play the room. I'm not gonna lie. I was very close to taking Leggett there, and it had a lot to do with the context. I think it was Brett Coleman who posted the thread, but I'll have to find it. Yeah, it's Justin, you kind of nailed it. He had some family tragedy, and I think at the end of his thread, Brett corrected himself, and the death of his parents were a couple years apart, but they're very close, and they were in his high school or right before high school, going into college, somewhere in there. And then he had COVID in his second year. His third year, they changed offensive coordinators. He was behind some not great players, but behind some senior guys who just had seniority over him. So it took a little while for him to finally get his opportunity. Initially, they used him as just kind of a yak guy because he had some elite athletic ability. But as his ADOT grew, they started to see that he was a complete receiver. And I believe his ADOT was like 14 or 15 or something last year. So I think we got a complete receiver here. I think the context kind of helps with why he was a late breakout. So yeah, I think if the NFL gives us the draft capital we want, he's going to climb up these boards a lot from where you just drafted him.
Definitely seems like a player that we need to deep dive a little bit more because, yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, you guys know, the two of you, that I've been lower on Leggett. I mean, it's just the third and fourth year I would expect to have more production, just personally. But I understand the upside there and what he offers as an athlete. So I'm definitely interested to learn more about him and maybe do a deeper dive on him as a player. But my gamble that I made when I took Braylon Allen at 205 definitely paid off because here at the 208, you guys might know, but Ricky Pearsall. This is a wide receiver I'm just growing more and more on. I really like him a lot. I think that he offers the ability to play inside, to play outside. When you look at his stats as well, he had certain seasons where his ADOT was really low, some that were really like top of in all of college football. So it's crazy to see that he can work underneath, he can work deep. At the Senior Bowl, kind of like how we alluded to with Lad McConkey, Pearsall also he was cooking guys at the Senior Bowl so much so that after the first 2 days of practice, he didn't even practice in day three, which that's typically a good sign that they're getting word from their agent, hey, you don't need to practice anymore. You've shown how good you are. So yeah, I think that he is a player that could be drafted at the top of the second. I think he's one of the best route runners in this draft, actually. And he has one of the most insane catches that I saw in college football last year. In traffic, one handed, gets freaking just squished between guys. And yeah, I think he's going to be a great sleeper in rookie drafts.
Yeah, he has a couple contestants for catch of the year, or maybe they weren't in the same year. I don't know. They don't really say that when you're just watching highlights, but he sure is fun to watch on if you're just bored someday looking for some highlights. Throw on some Ricky Pearsall, it's pretty fun. Um, so for me here, we're definitely at the spot of the draft where it's very draft capital dependent. So, this area of the board is going to change a lot as we go through this process. I'm going to take a guy I know we're not super high on as a community here, but man, the tools are undeniable. He's another guy who you just love to watch highlights of. He's so much fun to watch play football. But then if you actually watch him play full games, it gets a little maddening because the consistency is nowhere near where you'd like it to be. Um, I'm taking Keon Coleman, obviously, as the graphic shows here. I found out this morning that he's CeeDee Lamb's cousin, for whatever that's worth. Apparently, Marvin Harrison Jr. is only being drafted where he is because he's the son of Marvin Harrison. Um, no, I think at this point in the draft, I'm betting on some upside. I don't know if he hits it, but he's definitely got it.
Yeah, Coleman would have been my pick right here, but I'm not mad that you took him because it lets me take someone that I believe more in. I think this will actually tie into our community question kind of very nicely for next week when we introduce this concept of what do you do when you feel like the community is really high on someone? Because I think Coleman is going to have a lot of resale value, and he's not going this late in most drafts. So I am deciding between a few guys here that David would love to draft on his own teams because he is a huge, gigantic Michigan Wolverines fan.
What?
I'm looking at Blake Corum. I'm looking at Roman Wilson here. I think that Roman Wilson will probably end up being my pick here. I
Final answer?
Roman Wilson's final answer. Blake Corum, I just feel like he could be 5, 6. He could be the RB1 in this class, so I probably should have taken him. But if he doesn't go to Los Angeles and he doesn't get a nice landing spot, I could see him really just like going into mediocrity. I could also see him being the RB1 in the class. I think Roman Wilson is going to be a nice slot with the ability to play outside. I think he's the type of guy that could dominate in the slot, could also be a receiver where they go to two wide receivers. It doesn't have to come off the field. He's fast. I think he was also a little bit of a product of the Michigan offense, the lack of volume that just made it so his counting numbers weren't so great. So I'm very excited to take a bet that someone is going to take him in the second round of the NFL draft. And hopefully, I wouldn't even mind late second round draft capital because that could just mean a better quarterback throwing to him.
Yeah, I believe it was Roman Wilson. He had the quote, "If you don't block, you don't get the rock." So he's a high T, hard nosed guy. Maybe somebody like Dan Campbell might be interested in. I don't know, but he was the guy that I was looking to take. So I'm a little sad, but oh man, I'm between two guys as I've been a couple times outside of the first round, and I am going to go with the other Wolverine. Sorry,
Oh, I
David.
wanted David to have to pick him.
Oh man, missed opportunity. No, Blake Corum, I agree that he does have the upside to be an RB1, and like I said with Braylon Allen, I think when you get the workload in college, not everybody who gets the workload in college gets the workload in the NFL, but the guys who get the workload in the NFL are guys who got the workload in college. You know what I'm saying? So I just think that he is a guy that NFL teams are really going to like. He's tough. He's a leader, and his agility. His agility numbers have really made me start to question. How much higher should I have him? Because I had him a little. I mean, fairly low in my ranks. But I've seen people talking about how his agility is like up there with some of the guys like LaShawn McCoy and Jamal Charles, just like on the testing numbers, half of it, just on that part. And when you watch him cut and change direction, that is probably his best attribute that you could say that he has. I also think that he does have good enough hands to be a option in the passing game as well. I just think that NFL teams are really going to like this player. And at 211, I can't pass up the last one of the last running backs that I think could be the best running back in this class.
I think that's fair, and I do think I would have had to take him if he was there at 212. So thank you for not making me talk about a Wolverine. I do appreciate it. Unfortunately, my Buckeyes are gone, so I cannot lean into my homerism. Um, this is a really tough spot to pick that will hopefully be cleared up by the NFL draft. I'm just going to take a little scroll here, but I think I know who I will be selecting. Yeah, we don't need to go further than that. I'm just going to go ahead and take Michael Penix here. Similar argument to Bo Nix, but I am less confident that he will be in the first round than I am Nix. Uh, he had a ton of first round buzz before he lost to arguably the best defense in the country in the national championship game. I still think he's got a real shot to go in the first round. If we do end up getting a sixth quarterback to go in the first round, it's likely Penix. And if that happens, he is an absolute steal at the 212 and likely will not be there in real drafts.
Yeah, in Superflex, taking the shot on the QB, never a bad bet, especially one that could get round one draft capital. Can do a real quick bonus. Just gonna throw it to everyone. I'll start with JP first. JP, is there anybody that you just want to give a shout out that like you also have in consideration for a uh, first 2 round rookie pick at this point?
Yeah, the guy that I want to shout out, first guy that comes to mind. There's a couple other top of the board that I think are interesting, but when you looking at my rankings, Jalen McMillan, he pops out. You guys know I really like him. When you look back to his 2022 season, he produced at about an equivalent rate as Rome Odunze, not in 2023. This was in 2022. So I just think when you look at that and Jalen McMillan getting hurt in 2023, that maybe he is better than we think.
Yeah, I've seen some JSN athletic comps there for McMillan. I think he's pretty fun. I could mention the other Washington wide receiver who might sneak into the back of the second here, but there's a couple other guys that I think deserve being mentioned before Polk. I think oddly enough they're at the top of this draft board, which isn't always how I would communicate. I don't, sleepers draft board is a little off normally, but here they are: JT Sanders, Marshawn Lloyd. I mean, we're in a 175 tight end premium. Sanders could go, I doubt in the first. We did hear some of that hype early on, but I doubt that. I do think day two is very likely for him, though. And Marshawn Lloyd is another guy. A lot of people love him. They think he can be, a 3 down back in the NFL. I do think he's a top five guy for a lot of people. Might be a top five guy for me as well. So yeah, I do think those two could sneak into a lot of second rounds.
All right. Yeah, got to agree with Lloyd there, size, speed guy. I've heard kind of like the same comparisons from some film guys that his vision doesn't seem as great. Obviously, if we didn't have some concerns about him, we probably would have drafted him in those first 2 rounds, but he's right on the cusp for me as well. So I like both of those picks there very much. Now that's going to go ahead and that's going to wrap up our rookie mock draft. Real quick recap. We had Harrison, Williams, Neighbors, Daniels, May, Odunze, Bowers, McCarthy, Brooks, Worthy, Thomas, then McConkey in round one. Then round two, Franklin, Mitchell, Nix, Benson, Allen, Wright, Leggette, Pearsall, Coleman, Wilson, Corum, then Penix. Round out round two. So a lot of value into even late round two that we are excited about. Good time to have those picks. So we are excited for the rosters where we have a lot of those. So that brings us to our very first community question. And I'm going to go ahead and throw it to David just to introduce a little bit about what we're doing here.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited about this segment. It's probably one of my favorite things that we've come up here in the planning process. This is how we're going to close our longer episodes. We're going to ask you guys a question about Dynasty strategy. And then the following week, we're going to read your answers. We're going to talk about them, how we feel about them. We just kind of want to give you guys a chance to share your wisdom, and quite frankly, we want to learn from you guys too. So yeah, we're really looking forward to this, and it'd be great if you guys give us some responses, and we'd love to get you here on the pod. So our first question, we did have to reach out to some fellow league mates because obviously this is the first episode. So we reached out to some people and asked them when they think the right time to start acquiring picks 2 years out is. So currently 2026 picks, and then we also asked how they value them. So JP, go ahead and give us some of our responses here.
Yeah, when you're looking at 2026 picks, yeah, these are the responses that we had. The first, I got two here. The first one is from Trav Bob. It says it's never too early. If I am sending my picks, I want full value. If I'm buying someone else's pick, I want to depress the value to like a second, right? So that's our first one. And our second one is from Awesome Dumpling. It says anytime before the beginning of the 25 season, slightly below rain on 25 first is how he values 26 firsts. And I tend to agree. If you're in a rebuild, you might think that the 2026 first is like, holy crap, that is so far out. But if you think about it, 2024, this season, if you're rebuilding this year, you're punting this year anyways. Going into next season, 2025, in that season, the next pick's coming up is 2026. Okay, so those guys that are not making playoffs or rebuilding, you can sell those picks at darn near full value. And I agree with the evaluations here. If you're going to get a 2026 pick, you can sell the person that you're getting the 26 pick from. Hey, this is 2 years out. This is not the exact same value as a 25 first. So I'm going to need to get, it slightly cheaper than a random 25 first because, yeah, that is the reason why obviously it's further out.
Yeah, I think those are some terrific answers there, and I think that's pretty much how we all approach it from the big picture. I really like this response. It was given anonymously, and I'll just say if you would like us to leave your name out of your response, just let us know, and we're happy to do so. This response goes though, I would only worry about them in leagues that I'm most certain will be around in 2026. I think they're good pieces to have in the right deal, but I don't generally go seeking them out. I think that first point is important though. Oftentimes we forget the human element of this game. These leagues could fold, and if it doesn't make it to 26, then you have just completely lost all value. You've also lost a lot of fun because the league folded. But I do think that's an important part. If you do think the league will be around, though, go ahead and acquire them and spend them appropriately. Like our anonymous responder here said, though, it's not generally the first choice. So I think that was a very thoughtful response, and I think that first sentence is definitely worth considering.
Yeah, I definitely had leagues fold where I've missed picks. Just one where I had the 103, 104 this year. It folded early in the off season. And it's like a bummer. You trade away your future for picks. So you got to be tuned into that. Absolutely. Like entirely understandable to think about. I do try to consider that a little bit in my decision making as well. But fortunately, all my leagues I feel like are pretty vibrant right now. This next one by Capacious15. He says before the rookie draft does not value 2026 picks. If his team needs to rebuild, considers selling older players in the preseason. But the dynasty life cycle is so short. 2 years is forever. He didn't type forever. I had to shorten this up a little bit. So he's a very well spoken, grammatically correct man in chat. Don't worry. It's just me who's unprofessional. So I think this is really interesting. I think the difference between 25 and 26 picks for me right now is primarily in the fact that 26 picks are less liquid just because there are a lot of people with this attitude. I'm actually personally like very interested in 26 picks, but this is like a very valid point that we don't always want to make draft picks, right? We want to trade draft picks, and it's just they're not entirely as liquid. So we have to really consider that the value will be equal to a 25 first at some point. It's just going to be know your league mates, know how many people might be rebuilding, like JP mentioned earlier. So that's a really good point and something I really appreciate having to consider because anytime I see a first, I get excited, but I got to remember that not everyone is as much of a squirrel brained person as I am when it comes to seeing a first round draft pick.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. There's some people that they don't value the 26th pick, like you said, and I've even seen some bigger sites even say, "Don't even bother sending me 26 picks." If you have managers like that, I mean, you want to talk to your managers and just get feelers out there every once in a while. If you know some people that are like that, I would try to get their 26 pick if you're gonna get it at, especially at a strong discount like that. I feel like, yeah, whatever, take my pick. So it's so far out. Yeah, then I would definitely inquire with those people. But if you guys are listening, first off, thank you very much. But secondly, obviously, this is one of our first episodes, so please give answers to these community questions because we would love to interact with you guys. You guys are all we have right now. So yeah, we appreciate you guys being here.
Yeah, a couple things I want to add to this discussion I think are kind of interesting. First of all, if you're getting, especially if you're getting a discount like we've just discussed, you probably should be. You're going to get that at the cheapest it's ever been, and then you can hold it as long as you like and wait till it's full value. You can sell it when you need it. So I do think buying at a discount is something we always like to do. But more importantly, not a lot of people have plans for their 26 roster right now. So if you can find the guy who's got all veterans and he thinks he's going to smash for the next couple years because he's got, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, CMC, whatever it is, but he's got a lot of points. Those points might be gone in 2 years. He might not be thinking that's going to be a high 26 first. So you might be able to get an early 26 first at a real discount. So if you're scouting ahead and making sure you're looking for the right 26 picks, I think it can be a real edge.
Yeah, along what you're saying there are a lot of times when going off of this concept, last offseason, I was offered someone's 24 first and I asked for their 25 firsts instead. I think sometimes like you're going to see a 26 first this year is going to be possibly more valuable than a 25 first, even if it's not going to appear like that right away. And hopefully that other owner doesn't think so. You can try to get that like little bit of extra bonus. I like to phrase it like, yeah, my win window, like I'm not really looking to compete right now, so I'd actually rather like have this that like I think I'm going to be competing in 26, so I'd rather get the pick then. Make it about you. See if you can kind of get like a little bit of an edge in the trade talks. Some people say don't talk in trades. I'm 100% the opposite. I love to walk through a process. It might not be my actual process, but a process. So I think 26 picks are potentially like a big edge up. Shout out to like Shane Manila of DT5 Dynasty Trades at 5 as well. I know he loves to say like those picks 2 years out. Same thing David was just talking about, like just kind of a wild card, right? Like any team can fall apart in 2 years. So aiming for those can be a real exciting value proposition.
So I guess we're ready for next week's question. Anybody have any closing statements they want to sneak in real quick?
Send me your 26 picks if we're in a league together.
Yeah, no doubt. So our question for next week, we want to know how much market value impacts your personal rookie rankings. It's something that came up in the mock draft a couple times today. It's something that I think we should all consider. So we're just curious how you guys feel about that. Please let us know. Justin, tell them where they can tell us.
Yeah, absolutely. You can reach out to us at DinoConFF on Twitter/X, whichever you want to call it. Comment on our YouTube channel at DinoConFF on YouTube. Email dinoconstructionff@gmail.com, or all of our personal Twitter handles also on the screen here and in the Spotify, etc. description. So feel free to just reach out to us directly as well if you have a question you really want to get out on there. You have any questions, just want to interact, reach out. We'd love nothing more than to hear from all of you. So thank you for joining us for our very first episode of Dino Construction. We hope you found this as helpful as it was for us. We also hope maybe you had a little bit of fun. We know that we did. And please remember to like and subscribe wherever you view or listen. From all of us here at Dino Construction, until next time.